Hey guys, tonight we slip into a strange and unsettling chapter of World War II, one that doesn't often make the glossy headlines or the grand documentaries, but one that shaped countless footsteps, sleepless nights, and hollow stares across the battlefields. You're about to step into the boots of a soldier in Nazi Germany, and no, you're not just tired from marching or cold from the mud. Tonight, you've taken your very first taste of a little white pill called Pervitin. And here's the catch. You probably won't survive this. Not because of enemy bullets or shrapnel, but because your own body and mind are about to be hijacked by chemistry disguised as courage. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first pill feels harmless enough. A tiny tablet pressed into your palm by a grinning comrade, as if he's offering candy on a long road trip. You hesitate for a moment. After all, your mother used to warn you about taking medicine you didn't need, but then you remember the 30 kilometers you just marched with a pack that feels heavier than a cow strapped to your shoulders. You pop the pill, wash it down with a swig of lukewarm water from your canteen, and wait. At first, nothing. Just the same ache in your thighs, the same blisters on your heels, the same dull fog clouding your head. And then, like someone pulling up the blinds, everything sharpens. The drizzle on your face feels refreshing instead of miserable. The mud sucking at your boots seems to release its grip. Your eyes dart from tree to tree, suddenly alert, as if you've slept 12 hours instead of none. It's not courage, exactly. It's more like a buzzing in your chest, a constant hum that dares you to keep moving forward. You don't know it yet, but you've just joined an unofficial experiment in mass medication. By 1940, the German military had distributed millions of Pervitin tablets to soldiers like you, convinced it would create the perfect fighting force, tireless, fearless, relentless. Historians still argue whether the Nazis truly believed it was a miracle drug, or whether they already knew the risks and just didn't care. Either way, the results, well, you're living them now. The world brightens in peculiar ways. The brown-gray countryside seems etched in sharper lines. You can hear the rustle of a rabbit darting through brush 50 meters away. The air even smells different: pine needles, diesel, damp wool, all layered and distinct. For a brief moment, you feel like the super soldier the propaganda posters promised, the one who never grows weary, who can march into Moscow without breaking stride. But beneath the thrill, there's a flicker of unease. Your hands are a little too steady, as if they've forgotten they're supposed to shake from exhaustion. Your chest feels tight, like someone's squeezing your ribs with invisible hands. And when you look at your comrades, you notice their eyes glint strangely in the low light, wide, almost too wide, like owls startled by a sudden noise. One of them cracks a joke about the pills being Hitler's little helpers. You laugh because everyone else does. But a part of you wonders what it means when a soldier's best friend isn't the man in the trench beside him, but the pharmacy hidden in his breast pocket. As the hours drag on, sleep becomes not just unnecessary, but impossible. You march long into the night, your body tricked into thinking fatigue is a foreign concept. Every step feels mechanical, like the pill is walking for you. Your thoughts race ahead about home, about orders, about whether you'll see the morning, but they never quite settle. Like a radio dial turned just off station, there's always static buzzing in the background of your brain. And that's when the first strange thing happens. You swear you see a farmhouse lantern flicker in the distance, glowing warm against the dark. You blink, eager for the promise of rest, or at least shelter. But when you look again, it's gone. It's just an empty field, cold and silent. You shake it off, pretending you never saw it, because who admits to hallucinating on their first night? Certainly not a soldier meant to embody strength. That tiny pill, smaller than a button on your tunic, has opened a door you can't close. The bitter taste lingers in your throat, and you realize the war isn't just against the Allies anymore. It's also a war against your own body, your own mind, against the gnawing question of what's real and what's chemical illusion. Remember this moment, because it's the point of no return. The pill will keep whispering, and you will keep listening, even when you know better, and tomorrow will demand another. The march stretches endlessly, like a reel of film stuck on repeat. You feel your boots grinding against gravel, mud, and frost, but the fatigue that should have broken you hours ago refuses to land. Instead, your legs pump like pistons, as if they've signed their own contract with the pill you swallowed. This is the infamous march that never ends, the miracle of modern chemistry. And it feels at first like you're cheating reality. Your comrades shuffle beside you, eyes glazed, packs sagging, rifles digging into their shoulders. Yet none of you collapse. You joke weakly about being machines, though the laughter dies quickly. It's hollow, too forced, like someone trying to prove they still have a soul. The pill has dulled your stomach's complaints, smothered your eyelids' demands for rest, and sharpened your vision so the forest line seems etched in ink. But there's a cost, and though it hasn't come due yet, you sense the debt stacking higher with each mile. Somewhere in the dark, an officer barks, orders, his voice cutting like a whip. He's not worried about you falling behind. He knows the pills will keep you going. He's worried you'll stop believing in them. You hear rumors whispered between soldiers. A whole battalion once marched for 3 days without sleep, fueled entirely on Pervitin. Historians still argue whether this feat was exaggerated propaganda or terrifying reality, but the myth spreads like fire, and you're already proving to yourself that it might be possible. The ground changes underfoot, from the soft give of farmland to the brittle crunch of frost-covered roads. Your sense of time warps. Hours dissolve, swallowed by the rhythm of steps. At one point, you realize you've been staring at the back of the same man's helmet for what feels like an eternity, hypnotized by the bobbing movement. When he finally glances back, his eyes are bloodshot, pupils wide, and you can tell he's been watching you, too afraid to blink, afraid to miss something in the shadows. Pervitin doesn't just keep you awake, it binds you to paranoia like iron chains. Every rustle in the undergrowth becomes an enemy scout. Every flicker of shadow between trees feels like a sniper's barrel. And yet, despite the pounding in your chest, you keep moving, because stopping would mean thinking. And thinking is far worse than walking. A funny thing happens. Even though you haven't slept, you start to feel as though you're dreaming while awake. The trees lean too far, the stars glitter too bright, and you're convinced you see a figure waving from a roadside ditch. You nudge your comrade, whispering urgently, but when you point, the figure melts into darkness. He chuckles nervously, mutters something about the devil in the pill, and the two of you keep going, as if acknowledging it too seriously might make it real. By dawn, your uniform is stiff with frost, your breath rising in white clouds, but you're still upright. Not everyone is. You pass a man slumped against a tree, eyes open but unseeing, muttering words that don't make sense. His sergeant hauls him up and presses another pill into his mouth. Within minutes, the man stumbles forward again, mechanical and lifeless, as if someone wound him up with a key. There's a cruel truth here. The pills don't just make you faster or stronger, they make you useful. They strip away hesitation, erase weakness, and turn your body into a tool that obeys orders without pause. One mainstream historian once called Pervitin the fuel of blitzkrieg, not tanks or planes, but the drugged soldiers who kept marching long after human limits were crossed. The strangest part, you start to believe in the myth yourself, even as your heart thunders too fast, even as your mouth goes dry and your thoughts grow jagged. You convince yourself that maybe you are a machine, that maybe war has finally found the formula for perfect endurance, and yet, deep inside, You know machines don't hallucinate farmhouse lights in empty fields. Machines don't hear phantom footsteps pacing them at night. Machines don't feel the creeping suspicion that the war isn't against an enemy out there but against whatever is happening inside your own skull. Still, when another pill is offered at the next halt, you don't hesitate. Your fingers close around it with quiet desperation. The march must go on, and so must you. The first thing you notice is your hands. They don't feel like yours anymore. They tremble, even when you try to hold them still, the fingers twitching as though some hidden current runs beneath your skin. At the same time, everything you touch seems hyper-real. The rough stock of your rifle scratches your palms like sandpaper. The cold tin cup in your mess kit burns with metallic sharpness against your lips, and even the wool of your gloves feels coarse, alive. Shaky hands, sharp senses, that's the bargain you struck with that pill. You try to ignore it, but your comrades notice too. The ones who swallowed Pervitin alongside you show the same nervous energy, their movements jittery, their conversations skipping like cracked records. One soldier tries to roll a cigarette, but the paper splits 3 times before he can get it sealed. His fingers too unsteady to manage something he's done 1,000 times before. He curses softly, then laughs at himself, as though laughter might make the twitching less obvious. Food doesn't matter much anymore. The army issues the same stale bread, a lump of margarine, and maybe a sliver of sausage if the supply train was generous. You chew because you know you should, but your body no longer craves it. Hunger has been muted, tucked away like an old coat hung in the back of a closet. Instead, your mouth is dry all the time, your teeth feel gritty, and water never seems to quench the thirst. Someone jokes that Pervitin has saved the Reich millions in ration soldiers, too wired to remember. Mealtime are cheaper to feed. You chuckle, but a hollow pit forms in your stomach, because it might actually be true. And here's where history slides in with its cold facts. German medical officers had noticed by 1940 that soldiers on Pervitin ate less and marched longer. Reports circulated of entire units traveling 50, 60, even 70 kilometers in a single push. Their eyes bulging, their skin clammy. Some commanders praised the drug as a strategic marvel. Others worried about nervous collapse. Historians still argue whether the generals truly understood the risks, or whether they turned a blind eye in pursuit of victory. Your senses sharpen until even the forest becomes suspicious. A crow caws above you, and you snap your head toward it as if it were an artillery shell incoming. The crunch of a comrade's boot on frozen leaves makes you flinch, convinced for a split second it's a landmine. And though you try to laugh it off, you can't escape the creeping realization that your nerves are no longer your own. The pill holds the reins. Night in the bunker doesn't help. Picture this, you and 30 men crammed into a dugout carved out of damp earth, a faint lantern hissing above, the air thick with sweat, tobacco, and damp wool. No one sleeps. Not really. Some sit staring at their boots for hours, lost in thoughts they can't untangle. Others scribble letters that ramble off into nonsense halfway down the page because their hands jitter too much to form steady lines. One man mutters prayers under his breath. Another hums tunelessly, over and over, like a needle stuck on a record groove. The whole place feels like a waiting room for madness. You try to write a letter yourself, but your hand betrays you. The words scratch across the page, uneven, erratic, like a drunk spider scrawling across paper. You want to tell your family that you're fine, that you're strong, that the war is going your way. But the more you press the pencil, the shakier the letters become, until the truth leaks through. I am not fine. You crumple the page and shove it deep into your pack. Ashamed. One comrade pulls out a sardine tin, pries it open with his knife, and offers you one of the oily little fish. You refuse, not because you're not hungry, but because the sight of food makes your stomach twist. He shrugs and eats it himself, his fingers glistening with oil, his eyes darting around the bunker like he expects someone to snatch the food from his hand. Later, you catch him tucking the empty tin into his pack, as if even trash has value in this strange new world. And yes, remember this sardine tin wheel, come back to it later, because nothing goes to waste here, not even memories. Sleep, when it finally comes, is fractured. You lie on your back, staring at the wooden beams overhead, listening to the wheeze of men trying and failing to drift off. At last, exhaustion wrestles Pervitin into a corner of your brain, and you slip into a half-dream. Accept these dreams. Don't wait politely for night, they bleed into your waking hours. You see shadows where none exist, hear footsteps pacing outside when the sentry swears no one is there. Once, you even swear you hear your mother calling your name, soft and insistent, just beyond the bunker wall. You leap up, heart pounding, but the only sound is the wind whistling through the trees. Historians debate whether these hallucinations were a direct side effect of the drug or a byproduct of extreme sleep deprivation. But either way, the line between dream and reality blurs, and you, caught in the middle, start to doubt the reliability of your own eyes, your own ears. What use is a soldier who can't tell real footsteps? The bunker is your new world. A low, claustrophobic cavern carved into the side of a slope, shored up with rough timber beams, damp with the smell of earth that never dries. The doorway is no more than a jagged hole, covered with a blanket that flaps like a ghost whenever the wind catches it. You duck your head inside and immediately feel the weight of the place pressing down. There are no windows, no clear separation of day and night. Here, time dissolves into one long stretch of flickering lamplight and whispered conversations. This is the bunker without night. 30 men crowd inside, though the space was probably meant for 15. Boots line the walls, muddy and cracked. Rifles lean against corners, some oiled, some forgotten. The air is sour with sweat, tobacco, smoke, and the faint temps of mildew. At first, you tell yourself that you'll get used to it, that the human body adapts to anything. But you soon realize it isn't the smell or the lack of space that gnaws at you. It's the fact that nobody here sleeps. Pervitin doesn't allow it. The officers pretend it's normal, pretend it's discipline or morale, but you can see it in their eyes too. Even the sergeant, usually so stern and controlled, fidgets with his belt buckle, tapping a rhythm that doesn't exist, his eyes never quite close, not even when he leans back and pretends to nap. He tells you to rest when you can, but you know it's a lie. You could lie flat on the damp floor, wrap yourself in a blanket, close your eyes and you'd still feel your mind buzzing. Like a hive of hornets, you sit shoulder to shoulder with comrades who look like pale phantoms of themselves. One scribbles endlessly in a notebook, lines of words tumbling across the page until they overlap and dissolve into nonsense. Another hums the same 3 notes of a folk song over and over, lips trembling, voice flat. A third simply stares into space, his face blank, except for the occasional twitch that jerks his head to the side, as if someone had tugged an invisible string. The lantern sputters above, sending shadows crawling across the dirt walls. Every shadow seems alive. Every creak of timber sounds like the earth shifting to swallow you whole. When the wind outside rises, the blanket door flaps, and for an instant you think someone has slipped inside. Your hand darts to your rifle before you realize it's nothing. Everyone else does the same. You can see it in the sudden, sharp movements, the way men's eyes flick toward corners. You're all haunted by enemies that aren't there, and yet, you keep taking the pills. It's not just because the sergeant demands it, though he does, pressing tablets into your palm with a tight smile, muttering about keeping sharp. It's because you're afraid of what happens if you stop. You've heard stories. A soldier in another company tried to go without for 2 days. He collapsed, shaking violently, muttering about spiders crawling across his chest. They found him clawing at his uniform until he bled. No one speaks of him anymore, except in whispers. The pill isn't just medicine now, it's insurance. Insurance against collapse, against weakness, against becoming the next whispered warning. You try to distract yourself. Some men carve playing cards from scraps of cardboard. Others tell stories about home, though the stories never finish. They trail off into silence, swallowed by the weight of the bunker. You attempt a letter again, pencil scratching on rough paper. The words blur. You write, "I am fine, don't worry about me." But your hand shakes, and the letters come out jagged, like the lies they are. You crumple the page and stuff it into your pack, next to the sardine tin you kept. Yes, the same tin still, rattling faintly whenever you move. You'll be surprised how often it turns up. Sometimes you think you'll never leave this underground purgatory. The officers claim you'll be rotated to the front soon, but the days blur into one another. One historian once described German dugouts on the Eastern Front as factories of insomnia, factories where men churned out their sanity as raw material, day after sleepless day. Historians still argue whether the pill extended the war by making soldiers last longer, or whether it hastened collapse by eating away at their minds. From where you sit, hunched and twitching, the answer seems obvious. And then, one night, or maybe it's morning, you can't tell, you hear laughter, sharp, high-pitched, wrong. A comrade in the corner is giggling uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face. He clutches his rifle like it's a toy, pointing it at shadows, laughing harder each time. The letter lies half-finished in front of you, a wrinkled scrap balanced on your knee, trembling under the weight of your own unsteady hand. The pencil scratches weakly, as if the graphite itself is reluctant to leave a trace of your thoughts. You want to write something simple, something comforting. "Dear Mother, I am well, do not worry." But the words stumble into jagged lines, each letter warped by your twitching fingers, until even you can barely read them. These are the letters you can't write. At first, it seemed easy enough. You told yourself you'd send cheerful news from the front, that you'd play the dutiful son or husband, promising that everything was fine. But the pill has stolen your ability to fake calm. Your hand shakes, your heart races, and even the lies won't hold steady on the page. So, you fold the paper in half, then again, and shove it deep into your pack, where no one will find it. A graveyard of unsent letters grows inside that pack, each one proof of the battle raging in your nerves. Around you, others struggle too. One man writes furiously, whole pages at a time, but when you glance over, you realize it's nonsense. Loops, scribbles, entire lines crossed out until the page is nothing but black streaks. He tears it up in frustration, then starts again, only to repeat the cycle. Another man reads the same letter from home over and over, lips moving silently with each word, as though repetition might make the paper smell more like the farmhouse kitchen he left behind. And then there are the men who don't even try. They sit, staring at the bunker wall, eyes hollow, as if they've already said goodbye to the world outside and see no point in writing it down. That the irony isn't lost on you. The regime insists that soldiers send letters home, insists that you project strength, discipline, faith in victory. Yet the very pills handed out by the same regime make it nearly impossible to hold a pencil steady long enough to form the illusion. You wonder if anyone notices back in Berlin that letters from the front arrive shakier, more frantic, less coherent than they should. Historians still debate how much the German public understood about the condition of its soldiers. Did families notice the erratic handwriting, the half-formed sentences, the sudden bursts of mania bleeding through ink? Or did they believe, because they needed to, that the words reflected bravery rather than chemical chaos? Sometimes you catch yourself whispering drafts of letters aloud, practicing what you might write if your hand could obey. "I am fine. I sleep well. The food is good. We are winning." You imagine your mother reading those words at the kitchen table, nodding, maybe even smiling. But then the truth hammers back. You don't sleep, you don't eat, and you don't know if you're winning anything at all. The gap between reality and what you could bear to admit grows wider with each sleepless night. The sergeant notices your frustration one evening and smirks. "Don't bother," he says, tapping the breast pocket of his tunic. "My letters are written for me." He pulls out a stack of pre-printed postcards, each one filled with generic lines of encouragement. "I am well. I hope you are well too." All he has to do is sign his name. You feel a pang of envy, then shame. Maybe the sergeant has found the real trick to surviving. Don't try to tell the truth. Don't even try to lie. Just reduce your life to formula and routine, as mechanical as swallowing a pill. But you're not quite there yet. You still believe in the act of writing, in the possibility that words might anchor you to something outside the bunker. So, you keep trying. Another scrap of paper, another attempt. The pencil shakes worse this time. The words slip sideways. You try to steady yourself by resting your wrist against the sardine tin in your packet rattles faintly, as if mocking your struggle. You grin despite yourself, whispering steady as a tin of fish. The joke is weak, but it gets you through. One more line, night deepens. Though in the bunker, you wouldn't know it, if not for the distant sound of artillery rumbling, like faraway thunder. A comrade across from you mutters while he writes, his voice rising louder and louder until the sergeant snaps at him to shut up. But he doesn't stop. He just stares at the page and mumbles faster, like a man possessed. Finally, he rips the paper to shreds, scattering the fragments on the floor. The rest of you watch in silence, no one daring to sweep them up. Tiny shards of sentences litter the dirt, like confessions shredded before anyone could read them. You lie back and stare. At the beams above, your fingers still twitching, your half-written letter burning in your thoughts. In a way, you realize every letter is a kind of hallucination. You're not really telling your family what life is like here. You're constructing a dream version of yourself. Someone strong, someone sane, someone in control. The cruel part is that the drug makes both realities impossible, the real and the fake. You can't tell the truth, and you can't disguise it either. The lantern flickers once, twice, and goes dark. Someone curses softly, fumbling for matches. In the brief silence, you hear it. The sound of pencils scratching, restless hands still trying to put thoughts to paper, even in the dark. Men writing invisible letters no one will ever read. And you know you'll try again tomorrow, no matter how much your hands betray you. Because as long as you keep writing even badly, even shakily, you're reminding yourself that somewhere, outside this bunker, someone might still be waiting. The sergeant's stash is no secret. Everyone knows about it, though no one dares to speak of it too loudly. It's hidden in a dented biscuit tin, tucked inside his field pack, alongside official papers and ration slips. Inside are the real treasures, neat rows of little white tablets wrapped in wax paper, like tiny sweets for a bitter world. He keeps it close, guarding it as if it were gold, and in a sense, it is. Gold won't keep men marching. Gold won't keep their eyes open at 3 a.m. Gold won't silence the gnawing of hunger and the trembling of doubt. But these pills will. The sergeant isn't foolish. He never admits openly that he doles them out as rewards. But you see the pattern. The eager soldier who obeys without question, who lugs extra equipment without complaint. He gets a tablet pressed into his hand when the march is long. The one who falters, the one who questions orders, finds himself with nothing. And so, loyalty becomes chemical, measured not in camaraderie or patriotism, but in milligrams. The stash is his power. One evening, after a punishing march that left your boots caked in ice and mud, the men collapse into the bunker in silence. Everyone looks to the sergeant. He opens the biscuit tin slowly, theatrically, as though he's unveiling a relic. You watch as men lean forward, eyes bright with hunger, not for food, but for that bitter little tablet. He hands them out, one by one, his gaze sharp, weighing. loyalty, and usefulness with every motion. When your turn comes, he lets the pill rest on his palm a moment too long, studying your face. Then he drops it into your hand. Relief washes over you, followed by the familiar buzz as you swallow it dry. The routine is dangerous, but it works. The sergeant has found the secret to command. Orders shouted into the wind can be ignored, threats can be resisted, but the promise of a pill that gets obedience. You begin to realize that the Reich has created a new kind of soldier, not just disciplined by fear, but chemically bound by need. Historians still debate whether officers fully understood the dependency they were cultivating. Some argue they knew exactly what they were doing, that the stash wasn't just a convenience, but a strategy of control. Others suggest the officers themselves were addicted, unable to see beyond their own haze of sleepless days and jittery nerves. Either way, the stash turned battlefields into laboratories, and soldiers like you into test subjects. You start to notice the subtle ways the stash shapes behavior. One man volunteers for every dangerous assignment, hoping for the reward. Another grows bitter and sullen when passed over, his hands shaking worse than yours. Once, during a lull, a private even tried to steal from the tin. He was caught, dragged out into the cold by the sergeant, and beaten until he whimpered apologies. Afterward, the sergeant handed each of you a pill, as if to say, obedience is rewarded, disobedience is punished. The lesson was clear, the irony is sharp. The pill is supposed to make you fearless, but you've never been more afraid of what happens if you don't get one. Afraid of the moment when the stash runs out, and you know it will. Supplies are never endless, not in war, you imagine. The day the biscuit tin lies empty, its lid rattling hollow, the thought chills you more than any Soviet gun. Sometimes, in the dead of night, you hear the sergeant fumbling with the tin, swallowing pills when he thinks no one is watching. His leadership, his sharp commands, his unwavering discipline, they, too, are propped up on those bitter tablets. You wonder if he realizes the hypocrisy, or if he's too far gone to care. After all, a man guarding his stash isn't just guarding power. He's guarding his own crumbling facade. You tell yourself you could quit if you wanted, that you're still in control, that the stash hasn't claimed you the way it has others. But deep down, you know the truth. You reach for the pill without hesitation now, your hand moving before your mind even agrees. The stash is not just the sergeant's anymore. It belongs to all of you. It owns all of you. And as the war grinds on, you realize something even darker. The stash will outlast the sergeant. Long after his name is forgotten, long after the battles blur together, you'll still feel the echo of that biscuit tin rattling in your mind. A tiny sound, a faint memory, but enough to make your hands twitch all over again. Dreams come early now, long before your head touches the damp bunker floor. They creep in while your eyes are open, slipping through cracks in your overstimulated mind. At first, they're subtle shapes in the corner of your vision, flickers of light that vanish when you turn your head. But soon, the line between dream and reality frays completely, until you can no longer be sure if you're standing in a frozen forest or stumbling through a nightmare. Stitched together by Pervitin are the dreams that refuse to wait. You're on sentry duty one night, rifle heavy in your shaking hands, breath frosting in front of you. The woods stretch endlessly in every direction, silent except for the occasional groan of branches in the wind. Then you see it, a lantern swaying between the trees, a warm yellow glow moving steadily toward you. You raise your weapon, heart pounding, and call out. No answer. The light bobs closer. You squeeze the trigger halfway only to realize the lantern is gone, vanished like smoke dissolving in air. You blink, rub your eyes, whisper to yourself, did you imagine it? Or did Pervitin plant another vision in your skull? When you stumble back inside the bunker, the others nod knowingly. They've seen things too. One swears he spotted a Soviet patrol crawling through the snow, only to discover it was a line of fence posts. Another claims he heard church bells ringing in the dead of night, echoing across a battlefield stripped of every building for miles. You all laugh nervously, but there's no joy in it. Deep down, you understand these aren't harmless tricks, they're cracks forming in the walls of your minds. Historians argue endlessly about the nature of these hallucinations. Were they the product of sleep deprivation alone? Or did the methamphetamine in Pervitin unleash something deeper, some primal distortion of human perception? Some scholars claim soldiers on the drug entered a state of hypervigilant dreaming, neither fully awake nor truly asleep, trapped in a limbo where both realities collided. Others insist that it was simply exhaustion, nothing mystical at all. But when you see a lantern that isn't there, when you hear bells tolling in an empty field, it feels like more than tiredness. It feels like your soul itself has slipped loose. The strangest part is how vivid everything becomes. You don't just imagine the lantern, you feel the warmth of its glow, smell the faint smoke of its wick. You don't just think you heard bells, you feel the vibrations in your chest, as if the air itself had trembled. These dreams are stitched into your senses with cruel precision. They demand to be believed. One night, you wake or think you wake to the sound of your mother's voice. She's calling your name softly, the way she used to when dinner was ready back home. You sit up, clutching your rifle, and see her silhouette standing by the bunker door. Your heart surges with warmth, with longing, and you stumble toward her. But when you reach out, your hand brushes only the rough wool of the hanging blanket. The silhouette is gone. The voice is gone. You collapse against the wall, trembling. A comrade glances at you, but says nothing. He's seen enough men chasing ghosts to know better than to ask. The sardine tin rattles faintly in your pack as you settle back down. Somehow, its small weight feels more real than anything else. Food, metal, oil, the tangible world. You grip it like an anchor, whispering to yourself, "This is real, this is real." The tin doesn't answer, of course, but for a moment, its silence is a comfort. By now, the hallucinations are a kind of shared language among your unit. You describe them to each other, comparing details, as though trying to piece together whether they mean something. One man jokes that maybe the pills open a second front inside your brain. Another wonders if the visions are messages from God or from the devil. The sergeant shuts down such talk quickly, reminding you that faith isn't in ghosts or demons, but in the Forer. Yet you've seen the way his eyes dart around when shadows shift. You know he sees things too. The cruelty of Pervitin is that it doesn't let you rest, not even in dreams. When you finally collapse, body demanding what the pill denies, your sleep is broken, jagged. You dream of marching endlessly through mud that clings to your boots like tar, of rifles that melt into your hands, of faces that blur and vanish when you try to remember them. You wake, gasping, heart racing, as tired as when you closed your eyes. You wonder if you'll ever know true rest again, or if the pill has stolen it permanently, and yet to keep taking it. You line up with the others, accept the tablet from the sergeant's tin, swallow without hesitation, because even though the dreams terrify you, the idea of stopping terrifies you more. At least the hallucinations keep you moving. At least they keep you from collapsing like the man who clawed at his chest, screaming about spiders, so you march on, your mind caught in a twilight world where lanterns glow in empty forests and mothers whisper at bunker doors. You tell yourself you'll make sense of it all later, when the war is over, when you're home again. But deep down, you know the war inside your head won't end with the war outside, and tomorrow, another pill will make sure of it. You shuffle forward, boots grinding on frost-hardened mud, and it hits you your body is running on fumes, while your mind is still sprinting laps at breakneck speed. Pervitin does this cruel thing where it convinces your brain that you're an unstoppable machine, but your bones, muscles, and organs know the truth. They sag, they ache, they quietly scream for mercy while your mind keeps barking, move faster, no excuses. The campaign is stretching on now, a blur of snow-slick fields, smoke-smeared skies, and villages reduced to broken timbers. The Wehrmacht pushes deeper east, and you're dragged along like a cog in some vast grinding wheel. Rations are thin, the cold gnaws at your marrow, but the little white pill insists. Footsteps crunch just outside the window. The moon itself seems to drift closer, a pale face peering down with too much interest. You can't look away, even when you want to, and yet despite it all, you keep marching, because there's no choice. The sergeant's tin rattles every morning, and every morning you line up, swallow, and step back onto the frozen road. Your sardine tin is still with you, a ridiculous anchor. Sometimes, when your mind spirals too fast, you press the cold metal against your cheek, grounding yourself. A tiny rebellion, a reminder that at least something in this war is solid, unchanging, real. You wonder quietly what your body will look like when this ends. Will you be a husk, hollow-eyed, bones sharp against skin? Or will you collapse long? Before the war ever ends, you don't ask aloud. Nobody does. Instead, you joke, you swallow, you march. The horizon never seems to move, but you keep moving toward it. That's the paradox of this life. Endless forward momentum with no destination you can touch. And all the while, your body whispers its secret rebellion. I am breaking, I am breaking, I am breaking. The next morning, you're not entirely sure it is morning. The sky above the ruined convoy is a dull, bruised gray, and the ash still clings to your boots like guilt. The sergeant shouts for everyone to pack up, though most of you were never really unpacked. No one slept, or at least, no one admits it. You simply lay there, eyes open, watching embers breathe faint red light, and shadows lengthen in unnatural ways. The pill bottle rattles again, always the pill bottle. This time, you don't even look at it before slipping the white tablet under your tongue. The bitterness is immediate, the chalky sting at the back of your throat familiar. Relief spreads through the ranks, as if the pills are some communion wafer from a strange new religion. You swallow, and once again your fatigue begins to fade. The promise is always the same. No rest, no hunger, no limits. The march resumes. Boots crunching on frostbitten earth, rifles bouncing against backs, helmets tilted low. Somewhere, a crow caws, startlingly loud in the deadened stillness. The forest feels tighter, branches nodding above into a ceiling that blocks out even the dull sun. You trudge, one step after another, your thoughts fraying like loose thread. At first, you think it's just the pill, but then you hear it, whispering, not words, but hisses, carried on the wind through the trees. You look around, several men stiffen. Ernst mutters, they're here again. He points into the woods, where nothing moves except shadows. The sergeant barks, quiet, keep marching. But the whispering continues, slithering along the edge of hearing. By noon, the road clears into a narrow valley. Here the war's fingerprints are obvious: shattered artillery, abandoned helmets, scraps of uniforms, half buried in snow. A horse lies frozen stiff, ribs showing through its hide, its reins still clutched in the skeletal grip of a rider who never made it out. The stench is sharp and sour, cutting through the winter air. You step past without slowing, though your stomach lurches. Hunger and revulsion are constantly at war inside you now. That evening, the company reaches a cluster of ruined huts. Charred timbers sag inward, blackened roofs half collapsed. The sergeant declares, this will be camp. Fires are forbidden to visible, so men huddle in their coats, breath steaming in the air. The only warmth comes from Pervitin itself, a strange, artificial burn that makes your skin feel alive, even as frost nips at your toes. It is here, in this broken village, that the hallucinations take a darker turn. You sit on a stump, staring at one of the huts, and suddenly you see it whole against smoke, rising gently from the chimney. A woman bending over a stove, children laughing as they chase a dog across the yard. The image is so real, you almost rise to greet them. Then the vision flickers, and the hut collapses again into its ruin. The children's laughter echoes faintly, then dies. You whisper, "Did you hear that?" Ernst nods quickly. Yes, they were here. They're always here. His eyes are wide, fever bright. Later, as you scribble in your notebook by the dim glow of a lantern, you remember something you once overheard from a field medic, that by 1941, the Wehrmacht had already distributed more than 35 million tablets of Pervitin to its soldiers, an entire army running on chemical fuel. Some historians argue this was the true engine behind Blitzkrieg, that speed and stamina were chemically sustained rather than purely tactical. Others dispute it, saying logistics and surprise mattered more than stimulants. But when you're here, trembling in the dark with a pill's electric fire still in your veins, it doesn't feel like a debate. It feels like truth across the camp. A soldier begins laughing uncontrollably. At first it's soft, then louder, until it fills the night. He clutches his sides, tears streaming down his cheeks. When asked what's so funny, he gasps, "The stars, they're moving like they're marching with us." Everyone looks up. The stars, of course, are fixed. But for a moment, you almost believe him. That's the problem with Pervitin. The boundary between almost and absolutely vanishes. One quirky but rarely mentioned detail from the archives: in civilian life, Pervitin was once sold as chocolate. Yes, the dawn arrives, slow, gray, and unforgiving, seeping through the skeletal trees like a reluctant witness to the nightmare you've endured. You rise from the frozen ground, joints stiff, muscles twitching involuntarily from weeks of forced motion, sleep-deprived hallucinations, and Pervitin-driven hyperactivity. The pill already hums in your veins, a pulse that sharpens perception, erases fatigue, and yet twists reality into a fragile, quivering mirage. Each breath hangs visibly in the cold, fogging before your face, mingling with the mist rising from frozen soil and broken remnants of villages long abandoned. The company moves forward silently, mechanically, men's faces pale, pupils wide and unblinking, bodies vibrating with energy that is unnatural yet familiar. Ernst is beside you, lips murmuring phrases that make no sense, hands sketching invisible diagrams in the air. You do not ask him what he sees, you already know. Everyone is drifting on the same chemical current, hallucinations threading into reality like fine, dangerous wires. Every shadow, every faint sound in the forest, is amplified to terrifying significance. By mid-morning, you reach a narrow valley, the landscape littered with ruins of homes, barns, and barns' skeletal frames. Frozen puddles glint like shards of glass, frost bites through boots and trousers alike. You step carefully, noting illusions at the edge of your vision, fleeting shapes that dissolve when you focus, shadows of phantom soldiers moving in perfect synchronization. The pill sharpens every perception, heightening your alertness, and yet it makes it impossible to discern reality from the phantom world your mind now inhabits. Inside a half-collapsed cottage, remnants of life cling stubbornly to the walls and floors. A child's doll, frozen in a cracked smile, a loaf of bread, hardened beyond consumption, scratches on the plaster that might be letters or hallucinations. You scribble in your notebook, everything is a ghost, everything is mirrored. The forest, the men, the pill, they are one and the same. Historical fact. By 1943, field reports noted increasing cases of Pervitin psychosis, including auditory and visual hallucinations, obsessive behaviors, and paranoia. Quirky detail: some soldiers believed that shadows of past enemies haunted the trees, leading entire units to fire into the mist at imagined threats. Scholars debate whether stimulant use improved operational effectiveness or merely masked exhaustion, while creating a subtle, collective psychosis in frontline units. Afternoon drags. As the march continues through frozen riverbeds, tangled underbrush, and splintered fences. Your body moves with mechanical precision, the pill pushing each muscle to extremes, while your mind fractures. Shadows bend and stretch in impossible ways, ghostly figures appear, then vanish, and whispers coil through the air in languages you do not know. You glance at Ernst. He points at a phantom formation ahead, whispering urgent instructions to nothing, and you nod in understanding because resistance is meaningless. Night falls again. The company establishes camp near a frozen creek. Fires are forbidden. Darkness presses down, chilling to the bone. Men huddle in coats, silent except for muttered phrases and the occasional laugh that cracks through hallucinations like a fragile lifeline. Pills are passed. You swallow yours, feeling the familiar surge of electric awareness and heightened paranoia. Across the river, figures circle, shimmer, vanish, and reappear. The whispers continue. Humor, brittle as ice, flickers. A soldier kicks a stone into the river, yells for the evil ones, and the hollow echo bounces off the trees. Laughter erupts short, tense, but it is enough. A reminder that you are still human, even if barely. You scribble frantically. The war is inside. The battlefield has shifted into veins, into mind, into every step. Sleep is a dream we no longer deserve. We march not for victory, but for survival, against ourselves, against the pill, against the forest that watches, and then, slowly, your eyes drift to the horizon. The forest stretches endlessly, patient, eternal. You feel the bitter truth sink deep. This war will never end, not outside, not inside. It is the endless march of chemical obsession, hallucination, and fragile human will. The night hums quietly, the river's frozen surface glinting in the pale moonlight. You lie back, notebook in hand, tracing the shapes of shadows and recalling every hallucination, every whispered threat, every laugh. Exhaustion is impossible, yet a deep, quiet understanding settles the forest. The men, the pills, they are a single organism. Survival is not movement, but endurance. The battlefield is infinite, and yet, somehow, you have survived it for. Now, the pill's hum fades, just enough to let your mind soften. You feel the cold seep into your bones, the winds sigh through the skeletal trees, the faint echo of laughter and whispers in this suspended, frozen moment. The chemical-driven march is temporarily stilled. You close your eyes, letting the notebook slip from your fingers, and you whisper, half to yourself, half to the forest, we made it this far. That is enough. The forest exhales. Asterisk, the night lingers gently, stretching like a soft blanket over the frozen earth. You feel the rhythm of your heart slow, almost imperceptibly, as though the forest itself has absorbed some of the tension, some of the relentless pace of marching, pill-driven movement, and hallucination. The trees sway in the wind, skeletal, arms creaking, and the cold seeps into every corner, reminding you that despite the chemical fire inside, nature persists, patient and eternal. Your breathing steadies, and the phantom figures of the forest fade into the periphery. The laughter, brittle and fleeting, no longer jars the senses but settles as a memory of humanity clinging in small ways. You recall every shadow, every whisper, every moment when reality blurred with hallucination, and yet, in the quiet, there is a strange kind of Piscean sense that you have endured something vast and incomprehensible, and remain, against all odds, intact. Pervitin may have pushed you past limits, stretched perception into impossible territory, and blurred the line between reality and hallucination. The forest may have haunted every step, every glance, yet here you are, still standing or lying, still breathing, still able to reflect. The march continues in memory, but for this moment, the pace slows. The snow reflects a gentle glow, the river's ice murmurs softly, and the wind carries the barest hint of reassurance. Your notebook rests beside you, filled with the jagged, feverish scrawl of survival. In it lies the record of hallucinations, humor, fear, and endurance. You realize the war was never only outside. It lived in every pill, every shadow, every whisper inside your head. And though it may continue, at least for now, you are allowed a pause, a breath, a soft surrender to rest. The forest exhales with you. The wind whispers a lullaby. And you understand, softly, gently, you survived.